All right, I'll call this Town Council meeting on November 23rd, 2021 to order at 7:06 p.m. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let me readjust there. All right. Proclamations and presentations, we have none at this time. Public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Town Council for a 2-minute limit. If you would like to participate, there is a raise hand option at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Otherwise, you can hit *9. If you're on a mobile device, I'm just going to say it one more time because we had a person enter the room. We're at public petitions, communications, and public participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Town Council with a 2-minute limit. If you'd like to participate, you can indicate by raising your hand or hitting *9. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to number 6, public hearing items, which there are none. That being said, we will move to 7A, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council, with 7A being the fence viewer, providing an informational report on the last term. And I do want to recognize, I believe Bob Rubino is in attendance this evening. I thought I saw them for a moment. If they are, if you want to raise your hand, and we'll have you unmute.
His hand's raised. Okay.
All right. So in that case, Bob, if you are ready to go, you can take it away and provide your report.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I'm not one for reading what's abundantly obvious in front of you. Rather, if you have any questions about what this curious position called fence viewer is, I'd be happy to answer that, and at least some of my observations of why in this day and age we need perhaps such a position. So I'll turn it over to you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right, I will open the floor to any counselors if you'd like to raise your hand with the raise hand button to ask questions. Give that a brief moment. I am not seeing any at this time. Oh, we do have
Brenda
one.
did.
Counselor Falusi.
I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for volunteering your time for the town. Truly appreciate it. I have heard about this position in previous years, and I found it very beneficial. And I really appreciate the way you approach taking care of this business. Thank you again.
Thank you, Counselor Falusi. And I would actually concur with that. I know working on that Ned Weed incident was especially interesting, and I think definitely played a very strong role in why that role is important, as well as your continued efforts on the Conservation Corps. So thank you for all of your work, Bob, and hopefully we look forward to having you continue in that role.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Steve.
All right. And actually, before we continue, just want to recognize, I see Katie Murray just popped on as and I know that they are the chair of the Birch Grove Building Committee. Were you interested in providing any updates to the council? We're currently on the reports of boards and committees responsible to the council.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm Katie Murray, 8 Lisa Lane. I am chair of the Birch Grove Building Committee. Obviously, the school's open. We are in the process of closing out the project, and it's gonna drag out, I think, into the early part of next year, just due to delays in getting some of the last items. We have some technology items in the school that are just back ordered, and we just have to wait until they come in. I think the swing set is getting installed next week or the week after. But once the project closes out, it will be under budget. We will not spend the whole $46 million. And I think it's going to be something that our community will use very well for the next many, many years.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from counselors for Katie Murray? All right, seeing none, I just have one quick question, and perhaps this might be more appropriate for the town manager to answer. What would happen to the remaining funds due to the fact that we are under budget?
They just will not be spent. As far as the bonding goes, I think we issued only what we could for bonding anyway. And the state grant, we won't get that if we didn't spend it. So the funds, the budget will just remain there. Tammy's here. The budget will just remain in the account and just be closed out at the end of the year. So those funds they're not actually in our hands as far as the cash value, unless we get a grant or the bond proceeds to cover those.
Okay, great. And I see
This
To
Councilor-
draw
project
down the
is-
grant.
Yeah, the project is it's a reimbursement project. So Tolland pays the bills as they come in and then submits to the state for reimbursement. So if we don't spend $46 million on this project, it's not like we get to keep the rest of it. It just means that we haven't spent it and won't incur those costs.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. And Lisa, I do see Councilor
Brenda.
Fusi's hand up. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. Hello, Brenda Felucci here. I'm a little anxious, I guess. Maybe that's not the right word. I want to be encouraging of us ensuring that we're using everything we can from this possible refund, this budget, because if we're not taking advantage of it now and we're waiting to buy something later, when we could have an 89% reimbursement, I'm just concerned of us leaving that on the table. I don't know that you could speak to that at all, but that's something I would love to see us take advantage of this if we can at all possible. So I don't know if you wanted to respond to that, Ms. Murray, or if the town manager has a response to that. Thank you.
Yeah,
I
I could respond.
Okay.
I know that the Birch Grove Building Committee has been working very closely with the school staff, as well as numerous town staff, to ensure that this project meets the needs of the school and of the town. And what we can spend the money on is limited in scope, as this is a school project to build a school. So there's a limitation in what we can use the money on. And I think we've done a great job of ensuring that the school system is getting everything that they need from this project. I want to make sure that we do the right thing, that we give the school what they need. And we're also financially responsible. I mean, we don't want to buy things that we're not going to need or use. And we're really careful not to spend money on things that we won't be reimbursed for.
All right, thank you. And then before I recognize Councilor Luba, I just want to give a quick update to Councilor Nuccio. We're on the reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. Katie Murray is here, so we're doing a quick update on the Birch Grove project. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. But at this point, Councilor Luba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to reiterate and sort of reinforce what Ms. Murray said, that the Birch Grove Building Committee has been very on top of things with her leadership as well. That it's been something that we've looked at all the needs, we've talked to all the players involved in the entire construction project, and we've made sure that we've got everything that should be covered and that really needed to be covered. That we've tried to stay within the amounts that are reimbursable. That we've also gone beyond that, where if it's something that the town wanted, that the Board of Education or the superintendent Willett wanted, and that it was something that was reasonable, that we made sure it was inside there. and out of the town's contingency budget. So I think that we've done a really good job at making sure that that we've got the best that we could for the town within the means, and that it's not that we cut anything that that was needed. In fact, we've gone through several times, whereas we got closer to the end of the project, that everybody took a look at some of the things that we put off, and then decided, is this something that we could put back in? Is there value added to it? And is it something that is worthwhile putting back into it? And on several occasions, we did put items back into the budget after we saw we did have money. So I think that at least addressing Councilor Felucci's concerns, I think we've done all that. And I don't think it's something that we've cut costs at the sake of cutting costs, but made sure that it was a value added and that it was something that that everybody felt was needed. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Is there any other questions for Katie Murray? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Katie, for that update, and keep up the good work. All right, moving on to 7B, reports of town council liaisons. I know that is a part of our meeting tonight, but I'll go through the list of anyone who has
Excuse
attended the
me,
meeting.
Mr. Jones.
Yes, yes.
We
Councilor
still
Felucci.
have a couple items. I have a couple one report under
Yes,
7A, sorry.
my apologies,
Maybe-
no.
No, that's okay. Maybe it's something that we add sustainable CT and tourism as, you know, standing 7B and 7C or something like that.
Okay,
I don't
we
know.
can definitely take that into consideration.
Exactly, thank you. So Sustainable CT does not have an update. They are closing out their year in entering the next one. For tourism, there's a couple exciting things going on. The Visit CT webpage is being updated for winter. So you'll see a lot of winter activities up there. We are also part of a Every Town Has a Story. So Tolland does have a page for that, but it's about a year and a half old. So I would like to meet with the town manager like I did last time to go over what is on the Every Town Has a Story webpage and do some updates, because there are some events, some new events in the past year or so, like the Scarecrow event that isn't on that page, and get rid of some things that, or maybe update some items. For example, some of our pictures are of groups that visit Tallinn instead of actually groups from Tallinn that are on that webpage. So that might be something we take a look at. We're also continuing to receive more businesses that are looking to advertise or get exposure on our Tallinn tourism Facebook page. Last week, I spent about 3 to 4 hours visiting local businesses and encouraging them to post to the Tallinn tourism page or ask them for their permission to post on their behalf. And we received some excellent feedback on that. The businesses are very excited to receive that kind of exposure. So, and that was my report for tourism. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. All right, now moving on to 7B, reports of town council liaisons. I will go from the top of my list. Councilor Felucci, did you attend any meetings since the last council meeting?
Yes, I did. So I attended the Tallinn Green Historic Commission meeting. They had 3 public hearings for certificate of appropriateness. 2 of those were accepted, and one was about a fence and another one was about a window. And the third is being continued. The third one is about solar panels on the back of a house. They have some requests about Zoom. When they hold a Zoom meeting, they do not have any town staff on the Zoom meeting. So what that means is they don't have a host for the Zoom meeting. They cannot mute members if they do not have a host, and they cannot share a screen if they don't have a host. Now, it's very beneficial for them to be able to share screens, because a lot of times they're taking a look at maps or drawings or architecture or even photos. and they're unable to share them with participants during a public hearing, and that could cause them confusion, or maybe someone misunderstands some information if they can't share it on the screen. So they really need this issue fixed. They also talked in passing about possibly meeting with the town council and discussing what their roles and responsibilities are, but it was in passing during the meeting. I would wait to see if they end up having, one of their members reach out directly to us, but I wanted to bring that to light since it will probably make the minutes. And Blight, there was no meeting, so there is no report.
Thank you. Let's see, next on my list, Councilor Nuccio. I'll ask you to unmute. Hopefully it
I'm
comes up.
sorry.
There you go.
Trying
No
to find the button. This one isn't a touch screen like my other one. I'm like, where's the button? I have not had anything since the last town council.
All right, Councilor Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I did attend Planning and Zoning last night. They had their organizational meeting. Leadership was selected. Andy Powell was selected as chairperson. Marilee Beebe was elected to be vice chairperson. They had a couple of public hearing items. There was a discussion on the Somerset Woods project and modification of the permits for that project. And that is a 66-unit residential project with 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. And the change that was asked for was to make every unit 3 bedrooms and not have any 2-bedroom units, because that is what the developer said the demand was in the town of Tallinn. That's the Old Post Road project. Second public hearing item was the 40 Tolland Stage Road project. There was a special permit to allow work on electric vehicles and conversion of vehicles from gas to electric. And the discussion included, there are questions asked and addressed for some safety measures that would be taken, such as proper ventilation and proper battery disposal. So those were the 2 public hearing items. And then there was discussion of the firehouse improvements, discussion on proposed zoning regulation changes related to that. And then there was discussion about zoning regulations for structural added structures, mostly sheds to properties, and what should the variance be as far as how many feet away from the property line should they be, and so there was discussion on that. And then Santini walked them through a site plan regarding wetlands, and the applications will be coming soon for that project. So that project is moving along.
Thank you.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I do have another one. This is the first time for me. I did attend 2 meetings. The second meeting I attended was WPCA. I'm sorry, I didn't attend it. I was unable to make it, but I will do a quick review of the minutes because I did go through them. This meeting was on November 16th. Public Works Director Lappin reported that everything's been working pretty well. There was a radiator at the Old Post Road pump station that needed to be replaced, and that will be replaced this week. But this was dated 11/16, so it's probably already happened last week. And I'll at the next meeting, I'll find out whether or not that was done. There was an update to the 65 Merrill Road sewer connection project, and that's that Dunkin' Donuts area. The expectation is that will be up and running within the next couple of weeks. And then there was an update from Rob Grasses, who's the director of the Vernon Water Pollution Control Facility. And he reported that they're meeting all requirements that have been set by DEEP, and that project is moving along. And that was it for those 2 meetings I had.
Great. Thank you, Vice Chairman Regan. Councilor Udacek, I know you haven't officially been assigned any meetings, but just want to double check if you've attended any.
Thank you. Yep, I went to both Board of Ed meetings. Well, first meeting November 17th. Obviously, they elected, not obviously, but they elect Ashley Lundgren as chair and Sophia Shake as vice chair. It seems so long ago, 2 weeks ago, but I went to the one last week as well. They spent most of their time talking about the upcoming joint meeting coming up on November 29th rather, regarding the coronavirus relief fund and the turf field. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to have the new boards together and start a nice working relationship together on Monday.
Thank you, Councilor Yudichak. Councilor Khan, did you attend any meetings since the last council meeting? See if I can find them on the screen.
No, I did not attend any.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Luba, we're just on reports of liaisons, so just checking in on any meetings you may have attended since the last council meeting.
Right. Sorry for dropping off there shortly.
No worries.
No, the only meeting that we had was the building committee meeting, and that was already reported on by Ms. Murray, so we're all set. Thank you.
All right, great. So we will move on to item 8, new business. 8.1, consideration of a resolution to declare various equipment in disrepair or obsolete. Oh, sorry about that. I was muted. So
I'm
we'll move on to
sorry, I was trying to unmute mine. Colleen had her hand raised.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. I was just gonna, it's passed, okay.
Okay, no worries. So we'll move on to item 8.1. So it's the consideration of a resolution to declare various equipment in disrepair or obsolete from the Board of Education. Interim Town Manager Hancock, if you'd like to proceed with the summary.
Sure, this is in a normal process that we do every year whenever the town or board has certain surplus equipment. At the October 27th Board of Education meeting, the board made the motion to obsolete and surplus certain equipment. There's a list of equipment attached. A majority of it, from what I understand, is worthless, and some has been taken apart and used for parts. So I'm being told that it's not usable for some of it is not usable and that it is obsolete. So they are requesting the authority to be able to dispose of it. Certainly, if there is anything that has any value and is in working condition, the Board of Education will make effort to sell what they can. And those funds are usually returned to the capital and non-recurring fund, which will be used to fund future projects. And usually it's not much money, if anything, when we sell these things.
Great, thank you for that summary. And I see you're scrolling through the pages of the various items.
Yeah. You want me to start from the top again?
No, that's fine. Unless there's any specific questions, if any counselors will open the floor to questions on any of the items listed. Just give it one more moment. If there are any questions, if you can just raise your hand with the button for the capital equipment or the excess or obsolete equipment. Sorry, I'm jumping between pages. So if there is none, I would entertain a motion to approve the draft resolution as laid out in 8.1 to be approved by the Tallinn Town Council on November 23rd, 2021.
Lulu, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And is there a second? All right. First made by Councilor Luba, seconded by Councilor Nuccio. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we will do a roll call vote due to being on Zoom. So from the top, Councilor Nuccio,
Aye.
Councilor Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilor Regan, Councilor Regan's muted, so I'll just go over them for a moment. Councilor Falusi,
Aye.
Councilor Khan.
Aye.
All right, and back to Councilor Regan if you are available. Just give that one moment. Maybe they're having technical difficulties.
I've been having technical difficulties with the computer all night.
All right, Councilor Regan actually did message me that he's having an issue with the audio, but he is also in the affirmative. I don't actually know for procedure if that would count, but I would say the results are unanimous based on that communication. So we will move on to item 8.2, appointment of town council liaisons to boards and commissions. I will actually leave this to Lisa if you want to provide a brief summary of the documents that are available on the packet.
Okay. I also have, these are, well, let me start off. These are the boards and commissions that the town council usually appoints through their process each year. And not the boards and commissions, but the liaisons to those commissions. In your packet this evening is a list of those commissions, as well as the next document would be a list of the commissions and how many liaisons are appointed to those commissions. And it gives a brief description of what each commission does. So for example, the Agriculture Commission has one liaison. They meet the first Monday of the month at 7 o'clock. And they were established to support and expand Tallinn's agricultural heritage. So that document provides just some background for what each commission does. The next document shows who was on the commission the last time around. Obviously, there's some counselors who are no longer with us, and we have some new ones. So what I did was I have a blank spot here, so as you're deciding who's going to be where, we can add that information in to at least document it. Now, on the next page is a preliminary report. Steve, I shared it. I wasn't sure if I should or not, but this is where I know some of you may have caucused and discussed what commissions you'd like to share and be involved in. So I did include that as well. Just to make sure, things may change. Somebody may have changed their mind or whatever. So I included that information also. The other thing I had, because I got it after this was sent out, but there's also a liaison, and it's not a council commission, but it's a liaison for CROG for the policy board. Bill Eccles used to be involved in it, and I don't think he even knew he was involved with it, from what I understand. But I think we could probably, I'm trying to find out what this particular individual does on the policy board, and they have not returned my call as to what the position is about. But we can discuss it at another meeting, but I wanted to at least make you aware that I did receive this email from CROG.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And I do want to thank everyone for sending in their emails and working together. I do believe we were able to satisfy, I believe, the needs of most counselors in receiving at least 2 to 3 of the boards and commissions they were interested in being liaisons for. One point of note in discussing with the interim town manager about 2 of the positions, the health district and actually the mental health task force. It's sort of an interesting situation with both of those. When we approved Councilor Nuccio to continue serving on the health district, and due to the fact that the mental health task force does not have a defined end date, when Councilor Nuccio and Councilor Regan were reelected, they were automatically re-enrolled into those 2 boards. So they actually did not need to request them. Otherwise, the only way that an individual can leave those 2 boards is if they did not win re-election or if they resigned. So just wanted to make that point noted to the council. But other than that, the other only items of note that are in bolds that were up for discussion, the first was in regards to the Arpa Fund. There was no interest from Vice Chairman Regan to serve, as well as myself as chair, and because that was designated as a chair-vice chair position, I did want to leave that open for discussion amongst counselors. The second discussion item is the Board of Education currently had 2 members listed. I believe one was a standing member and the other was rotational. There was a proposal to change that to either 1 person every 2 months or 1 person per meeting and have a breakout that counselors can reach out to myself and Counselor Regan to prioritize months that work best for every counselor. PZC, there was a request to have 2 counselors on for those meetings, and Counselor Luba and Counselor Regan both agreed to be co-liaisons for that position. The Historic District was requested to be reduced from 2 to 1 liaison. And then the Tallinn Business Forum Subcommittee, there was no interest, and we had a bit of difficulty finding any documentation on its purpose. So there was a discussion point there to dissolve that subcommittee. So with that being said, I'd open the floor to any questions or comments or any clarifications on the list as laid out. And I see Councillor Nuccio, your hand is up first, followed by Councillor Luba.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to kind of pop in and say, I found it useful when we were breaking up the Board of Ed. I still believe the Board of Ed is one of the most important things for the town council to understand and kind of have their finger on from the perspective of budget and everything else. So I liked having the rotation myself, because I felt like that way every counselor went to 2 months worth of meetings. So they could kind of be up on what was happening in on the Board of Ed. That's just my personal opinion on it. And from did you mention the ARP?
Yes, I did.
Okay, from the ARP perspective, I'm going to let John speak on that one, but I'm definitely interested in continuing on in that one there.
All right, thank you. Councillor Luba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just to sort of build on what Ms. Nuccio said, regarding ARP, I think that it's something that when we were discussing previously before we decided on doing it, the chair, vice chair, is having a chair, vice chair, and or their appointees, so that if it's somebody that would not be able to participate or chose not to participate, that it could be fall to their to either your or Mr. Reagan's appointees. I think that's one of the things that would work out. And the other is regarding the task force, where I know I did reach out to you regarding it, the mental health and substance use task force, that there are 3 positions, I believe, that we said that could be filled by both Board of Education as well as by town council members. I know that we're only choosing to go with 2, and I don't know if that's something that we're going to plan on going forward with all the way through, or if it's something that at a point in time that we would consider using all 3 positions, since last time that we only had, I think, 2 people that stepped forward that to show interest in those. So, but as far as the Board of Education as well, I think that the way that we arranged it last time, having it rotating for 2 months, I think that that's something that, given that it's a liaison position and not a voting member position, I think it's something that would be appropriate, so it gets everybody involved, including the new members, to see what's going on during the discussions, particularly during the budget discussions, and that it sort of shares the burden as well. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Luba. And just a point of clarification, I believe the town manager wasn't entirely certain if there were that we did have up to 3 available in the document for the task force, but we weren't sure if there were actually 3 vacancies or if the remaining vacancies have been filled by residents, so that there wasn't even because it's up to, I believe, 11 or 13 is the total number of vacancies. So we weren't sure. So we started out with 2, but if we do get clarification from the task force or from Lisa Hancock, if there is a 3rd, we could very well have you added on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Luba. Councillor Regan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment here is on the ARPA funds, and you and I discussed this. I said I wasn't interested in participating in that, so I think it makes sense to have me appoint a designee, and my designee obviously would be Ms. Nuccio, because she's already been involved in this, and with her background, I think she'd be a great asset to that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? would like to raise your hand. I do have one question. I guess one concern is that with the subcommittee, we did actually receive clarification from the town clerk's office. It does have to have publicly posted meeting minutes and does have to be held in public. So I just wanted to clarify with with town manager Hancock, what your thoughts are on the availability of staff and yourself to be able to run those meetings, make sure that minutes and agendas are posted and that it's publicly accessible.
It's, there really isn't any other staff that could be managing that. I would have to be somewhat more involved with making sure it happens. I do, and this is totally up to the council because I know that, this is your subcommittee, but I recently sat through a session with the government finance officers, and the problem that we're having right now is that I don't have the final rule from the US Treasury. So everything that we're trying to talk about, I've been trying to keep a list of, if a resident contacts me or something else, and it's becoming a challenge to use this money. We're trying to, the best thing that can happen to us is if we can show a loss in revenue, because that gives us the opportunity to be able to use it for a lot of different things. If we start giving grants to businesses and things like that, there's a lot more involvement. You have to have staff who can be able to monitor how these businesses are spending the money, making sure things are audited, making sure the money is spent in accordance with federal purchasing guidelines and spending guidelines. This is what I got out of the meeting the other day. Like I said, everything's kind of in flux right now, and the sooner they can finalize everything, it would be better. My big concern is doing things like that. We may have to find a way to manage it if something like that is proposed. One thing that we could do is I could I could try to gather different ideas and propose them to the entire council. The entire council discuss it rather than having subcommittee meetings where we're just meeting and not really getting much done until we get this final information. So I really think it's up to the council if they would prefer for town staff to work together to bring forward information or whatever information I've heard from the public for requests and share some of those ideas. And then the council as a whole discuss them and decide what route they'd like to take. That's only an idea I'm throwing out there, but certainly for all of you to determine if that's how you'd like to do it.
No, thank you, Lisa. And I think that's where I'm leaning myself. To be quite honest, I think the fact we actually haven't really even had a formal subcommittee meeting since it was established in August. And due to the fact that we have a lot of priorities looking towards the next budget cycle and hiring a new town manager, as well as a new project and granted administrator that will be eventually on the system, I think it might be more beneficial that counselors continue to be engaged in providing information on ARPA to the town manager, as well as the chair and vice chair, and in conjunction with the town manager's office, working with staff, provide recommendations and conclusions about the most effective use of the funds to the full council at a public meeting. That is at least my proposal. I would certainly entertain some discussion on that from counselors, and I do recognize Councillor Falusi, followed by Councillor Nuccio.
Thank you. This is Brenda Flussi. Stevie summed up pretty much what I was going to say. I find it very beneficial to hear from the town staff about it, programs like this. You're receiving all of the documentation, you know what's happening within the town and where within the guidelines, what is applicable within the town. And I like the idea of having these inside a town council meeting where the 7 of us can sit down and discuss with the town manager and maybe even, sometimes bring in some other department chairs if one of your proposals is about helping out a specific department. So I agree with what Mr. Jones has proposed.
Thank you, Councillor Falusi. Councillor Nuccio?
Thank you, sir. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about it at this point. There's a lot going on with the ARPA stuff, and I definitely think we should be, anybody who has any ideas, we should be keeping an ongoing list in that. I think we've met once so far. The subcommittee met once to go over things, and there's a lot of information. So I think having it at a town council meeting all the time is going to be too much. I think we need to kind of have ideas, send them over to Lisa with the subcommittee, kind of looking at it to vet it, and then bringing the options forward to the town council in a more concise manner. When we first set it up, that was the whole intent of having a subcommittee. Towns are doing this all different ways. Every different town is doing this different ways. Some aren't asking for any input. Some are asking for lots of town input. Some of them have subcommittees. Actually, a lot of them have subcommittees that I've seen so far. They're all structured differently, but rather than bringing forward all of it to the town council, it seems to make more sense to me to kind of have everybody send their information in, and we can just put it on one spreadsheet, and then you can have the subcommittee go through, vet it, and bring forward the ones that we think are going to work. Because as Lisa said, the language with this is changing all the time. We haven't had anything super finalized yet. So at this point, we're really just gathering ideas. I agree, we shouldn't be picking anything to do right now because we don't have final guidance. And that final guidance is going to direct what we can and can't do. And then with all the stuff that's happened in Connecticut lately, I know Lisa's area, you guys are going to get swamped with the audit for the CARES money because they're looking at an audit now down to every penny because of the stuff that's happened in this state with the CARES money. The ARPA money is going to have just as much scrutiny on it. So I just think that keeping it concise and making sure what comes forward to the council is actually something that can be done is probably better. And we might not even have that information until thoroughly through next year. So at this point, it's more of a gathering and pulling everything together to make sure we meet the criteria. So my vote at this point would be to keep it as a subcommittee and gather all the feedback and then go through and sort it before we bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nuccio. Let's see, I'm looking through the list, I believe. Councillor Luba, followed by Councillor Regan, then Councillor Udacek and Councillor Falusi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would concur with Ms. Nuccio. I think that's something where for the entire town council to sort of wade through all the different proposals and everything at meetings would be, I mean, it would keep us at meetings till 11 o'clock every night like we would be for a budget meeting. I think it's something that having a subcommittee to at least gather the proposals, maybe prioritize them, and then submit them to Ms. Hancock so that that she could go through them with the department heads and determine what would be feasible, what wouldn't be feasible, how it would affect them. So we can at least sort of prioritize things and then have her address it, and the department heads address it, and then address it at a either a special session meeting or a dedicated meeting, essentially covering just that before we make any final decisions would be appropriate. But I think to sort of wade through it on a regular basis, every meeting or every other meeting to see where we stand would be a very onerous task, and I think would be very time intensive to be bringing in all the department heads on a regular basis to discuss all the issues instead of doing it like we would with a budget meeting at one certain time, addressing it all at one time. Just my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Luba. And actually, I do want to provide, my apologies, Councillor Regan. I see Lisa Hancock has their hand up, so I just want to see if they were responding to any comments.
Yes, just to Councillor Luba's discussion, I probably wasn't real clear. I certainly am still keeping track, and certainly if any of you have any ideas that you want to share, please send them to me because I do have the spreadsheet. I wasn't really thinking of the way of bringing him to each and every meeting or every other meeting, but maybe to try to go through a bunch of ideas and recommend them to the council. I could certainly share all at one, but when we're at a point of when we can use the money and we have enough definitions to move forward, my thought was to try to move forward with recommendations from myself, the staff, and look at also what I've received and see if there's a common thread of interest in certain items. But certainly, however you all want to handle it, I'm here to do what you need me to do. But it wasn't to have it at every meeting. I just want to make that clear.
Roger, thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. Councilor Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. So taking into account what Ms. Hancock just said, the original intent of the subcommittee was to streamline the process. I still think that's a good idea, but taking into account what Ms. Hancock just said, I think there may be some sort of a balance in between the subcommittee and what she's proposing. My comments back then were, I could see us being bogged down with this for months and months on end, because there are going to be a lot of people with a lot of different opinions, all valid as to how these funds should be used. So, I still like the idea of a subcommittee, but I'm open to more discussion with regard to what Ms. Hancock just said.
Thank you, Councilor Regan. Councilor Udacek.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair Jones, for putting all this work into it, along with the town staff, putting all this together. I like Lisa's proposal as well, and it sounds like it would be a lot more work for the staff, additional time to gather everything, put it together. And since it's only been met once, I think that it could just be brought to the council and we can make the decisions together.
Thank you, Councilor Udacek. So I think at this point, we're kind of at an impasse. So I would like to kind of conduct a straw poll at this time about whether or not we want to keep or dissolve the ARPA subcommittee and either keep it and assign liaisons or dissolve it and revert it back to, I think, the previous format, which was councilors provided information to the manager's office and they collected that information and worked with their department heads to provide a recommendation to the full council. So I'll just go through and do kind of that straw poll style discussion vote. So Councilor Nuccio.
Subcommittee, please.
Councilor Udacek.
No subcommittee.
Councilor Luba.
Subcommittee, please. Thank you.
Councilor Regan.
Subcommittee.
Councilor Falusi.
No subcommittee.
Councilor Khan.
Subcommittee, please.
Sorry, is that subcommittee or no subcommittee?
Subcommittee, yes.
Okay. And I am leaning towards no subcommittee, so that is 4 in favor of keeping the subcommittee and 3 to dissolve it. So we should move forward with keeping that subcommittee. With that being said, let's just move on to the Board of Ed, and we'll go back to the ARPA in terms of who would serve on that. But for the Board of Ed, it sounds like everyone was in agreement to
I think Steve froze. Did everybody freeze?
Nope,
Can
just
you hear me?
Okay,
I'm still
I'm
here.
moving to see if you
Steve,
can
we lost you.
give him a minute. He has problems, I know, sometimes at home with the connection, so.
Maybe we need to be townwide broadband. I'm just kidding. Sort of. But no, there's so many things. There he is. Well, sort of.
the appropriate thing is to let the vice chair take over at this moment.
That would be Counselor Reagan.
Yep, hold on.
having technical difficulties as well.
Yeah, I'm having some trouble too. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, then how about I propose a 5-minute recess while people get their technical things straightened out? And we resume at, well, we'll do 4 minutes right at 8 o'clock. And that'll give everybody a chance to reboot if they need to reboot.
That sounds good to me.
So I made that motion. Is everybody in favor?
I'll second that.
Aye.
If there's
Okay.
anybody opposed, say you're opposed. All right, everybody take 5.
We are in recess until 8 PM.
Okay.
Brenda, are you checking with Steve, by the way? Maybe? I don't think he's popped
I'm
back up.
I'm trying to, but Lisa's the only one who could let him in. Lisa, is anybody in the waiting room?
Nope. And
Nope.
I was just went to get my town cell phone to try to text him.
I can try calling him.
He's getting there.
Okay, he's back in, or he's signing in.
All right, my apologies for that. Seems to be a night of technical issues.
Than the weather.
We have to bring ourselves out of recess, I believe.
All right, Steve Jones, I make a motion to exit recess.
Brenda
Second.
Felicity, I second.
All right, all those in favor, Counselor Nuccio,
Aye.
Counselor Felucci,
Aye.
Counselor Luba,
Aye.
Counselor Regan,
Aye.
Counselor Yudichak, oh, Counselor Yudichak, you're still muted, just
I'm sorry, aye.
no worries, and Counselor Khan.
Aye.
All right, we are out of recess. Sorry, just
Okay.
getting everything resituated. So moving back towards the Board of Education, I don't know where I lost you guys in terms of my connection, but if counselors would want to send their recommendations to, or their preferred months to myself and Counselor Regan, in terms of ranked preference, we'll align those and send out results to everyone to make that work for every person to do 2 months. In regards to the historic districts, we originally had, I think it briefly went to co-liaisons. There was only, I think, one counselor, Counselor Felucci, was interested in serving on the historic district. So I just wanted to kind of get a feeler for everyone if they're okay with the historic district moving back to one liaison and Counselor Felucci being the sole liaison. All right, I'm not seeing any objection, so that seems to be okay. Planning and zoning, changing that from 1 to 2 with Counselor Luba and Counselor Regan being on a rotational basis to serve each meeting. Is there any objection to that being in place as is? Seeing none, moving on to the Tallinn Business Forum Subcommittee. This was another subcommittee that did not seem to have any interest and purpose, so is there any objection to that being dissolved as a subcommittee for the council? All right, seeing none, we'll move back up to the ARPA subcommittee. So it was in favor of a 4-3 straw poll to continue utilizing the ARPA subcommittee. With that being said, are there any counselors that would like to serve on that subcommittee? I know myself and Counselor Regan. All right. Let's see, I saw Counselor Nietzsche, your hand was up first, and then Counselor Felucci.
I would, please.
Thank you. Are there any other interested parties? So just to be clear for Counselor Nietzsche, that you would serve in the capacity as a designee for the chair, for the vice chair, if that was what was being proposed.
Correct.
All right, are there any other nominations for the chair's position for myself to have a designee serve in that role?
This is Brenda Felucci. I don't agree with there having to be designees. I think this subcommittee, just as any other subcommittee, we can nominate 2 people. I believe Colleen has had, excuse me, American Red Cross is calling looking for blood from me. I believe Colleen Yudichak would be a great asset to that. I think Sami Khan would be an awesome asset to that also because he is a business owner in Tolland. You know, and again, I don't think there needs to be designees. I think we could just nominate 2 people
Okay.
as we do anything else.
All right, thank you, Counselor Yudichak, followed by Counselor Regan and Counselor Yudichak, followed by Counselor Luba and Counselor Regan.
Thank you. Excuse me, Chair Jones, are you looking to replace Mr. Regan and yourself, or are we just talking about Mr. Regan right now? I just want a clarification where we were at.
I think in this case, we're looking for both. I think both myself and Counselor Regan have not expressed interest in serving on the ARPA subcommittee, so this would be up to two counselors to serve. All right.
Okay, you can go to others. I'll probably come back with another question.
Okay, Counselor Luba. Followed by Counselor Regan, and then I think Counselor Felucci has their hand up for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That I think that when we established the subcommittee, it was clearly set forth that it was going to be the chair and vice chair. And I think that since the subcommittee has not been disbanded, is still in effect, that it should then fall to to each respective appointees or designees. And so that's my position on this, because that's how it was established. That were the rules that were established. And as such, that's how it should stay, that each should have a designee. And I think that's how it should remain. That's all I have as far as I'm not looking to serve on that committee, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Luba. Counselor Regan?
And that's exactly the way I feel as well. I think it, when this was first set up, it was chair and vice chair. And now that I'm the vice chair, in my capacity as vice chair, I think I should have the ability to use that capacity to assign a designee. That's my feeling on it.
Okay. And Counselor Felucci?
Yes. I'd like to see the documentation on where we said that we would let the chair and the vice chair appoint designees, if that's allowed. If the chair and the vice chair do not want to fulfill their duties that are described in these rules, then I believe that we should take a look at changing them so that we can have two or however many people we decide on the subcommittee, and choose the subcommittee members as we sit. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to me that we wouldn't have other people when I can't fulfill or I don't want to fulfill my duty, go ahead and pick someone else to do it for me. I believe the seven of us need to decide on that ourselves. So if the chair and the vice chair don't want to fulfill their duties, then we change the rules that we've put in place to pick two people as liaisons, and we discuss and put the two appropriate people there. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Nuccio, followed by Counselor Luba.
Thank you. I believe the policy that we put forward was chair or vice chair. We didn't say anything about designees, so we would have to change that language to say chair or vice chair or their designee. I believe right now it just says chair and vice chair. The intent was that it was going to be bipartisan, so we could sit down and work on it and that. So I think we would just have to change the language if we decide that we want to do something different, whether it's chair and vice chair and designee, or if you just want to open it up to two liaisons. I think we're going to have that conversation and make the change.
Thank you, Counselor Nuccio. So if we were to make a change, Lisa Hancock, if we were to make a change to that, would that require us to have a separate meeting to make that change before we finalize any appointments?
No, I think it could just be if someone wants to raise a resolution and you have a second and a vote on it, you could decide on adding it to your commissions tonight, because you do have this on the agenda to talk about various commissions. It may not be in this list of things, but the backup document is there, and I think you could certainly raise a vote if that's how you want to go with it.
Thank you. With that being said, Counselor Nuccio, followed by Counselor Luba.
I would just say at this point, my suggestion would say that it stay either chair, vice chair, or their designee, because this is not, it's complex. Having some kind of financial background or something like that in there, I think would be useful for Lisa to help with all the stuff that has to be done in that. So I think if you don't want to do it as chair or vice chair, then thinking about who you want to replace you on that. I still just feel like the ultimate responsibility should be with chair, vice chair on this, because we are talking about the allocation of $4 million, at least the beginning process of reviewing it and going through it. It's going to be a lot of work to sit down and think about. all the proposals that come forward, making sure you're working with the town staff to go through all the regulations and that it's all in line with what can be done with the money and then brought forward to the council to be able to express the whys behind it in that. So I would just say, I would think it would be best to stay at chair, vice chair, or designee rather than just whoever wants to volunteer for it. And I would also like to say that I think we should do our best to try to keep it bipartisan, regardless of majority, minority. At this point, you just want to make sure we've got people from all sides at the table looking at it. So we're bringing forward items that can't be viewed as like a partisan spin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nuccio. Councillor Luba?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would echo that. I think it's something that when we discussed it, as I said before, when we discussed this originally and we set up the subcommittee originally, it was designed to be chairs, vice chair. I think that it would follow naturally that then if neither the chair or vice chair would wish to, that it would fall to their designees rather than saying, okay, no, let's start from square one. The subcommittee was established that way, that it should fall to them to be able to designate who they feel is appropriate in that manner. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Luba. Councillor Falusi?
Thank you. I just want to go on record saying that I trust our interim town manager when they hire them, our financial person, our grants writer, and anybody else in the town to be able to handle this task on their own without having to have the oversight of the members of the town council, without having to add another meeting to their schedule, and without having to create another task for them to oversee. I have no problem, as I had said before, with dissolving the subcommittee and allowing the town staff to do their job with their due diligence, with the expertise that they have. So that's my comment there. I know we did a straw poll already, but I want to make sure that the town staff knows that they have my full confidence in their ability to handle this money and make recommendations to the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Falusi. Councillor Luba, followed by Councillor Regan. And then I would just like to make a point that we have gone through, I think, multiple sessions of councillors, so I would like to try and get to a conclusion about this so we can move on to the next item. I know the public safety staff is up next, I believe, for our discussions.
Rod, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand, and I'll be brief on it because I know that we're only really supposed to have by Robert's rules two comments per discussion. So I know that we're well beyond that. I think this is not a matter of trust. I trust the people that the department heads and the people within the town hall. But it's our obligation as a town council to have oversight, and that we need to understand where this money is going, and we need to have some say. And it's not just a matter of the final thing and final approval of yes or no. I think it's a matter of where it is our obligation to oversee this and not necessarily direct it, but at least be able to see where it is and make suggestions and assist as appropriate. This isn't a matter of lack of trust or lack of faith. It's a matter of our obligation for oversight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Luba. Councillor Regan?
And he did it to me again. That's exactly what I was going to say. Our job as a town council is oversight. That's what we do. That's why we're here. That's why we were elected. It's oversight. It's not to direct people to do things. It's to manage and to try to understand what is happening with mostly with the funds that are coming in. And this is a big deal. These ARPA funds are a big deal. It's $4 million. There are a lot of people that have a lot of questions and want to know and have an opinion on what's going to happen with these funds. So I respectfully disagree with Ms. Falusi on this, and I still agree that we need a subcommittee to streamline this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Udacek.
Thank you. Whatever decision we make tonight, I agree with Councillor Nuccio that it does have to be a bipartisan decision.
Thank you, Councillor Khan.
Since the employees of the town staff is monitoring it, doing their job. I would say that let them do their job. Obviously, we are watching them and we are monitoring them. So I don't think so there should be another committee because this committee is within us. Doesn't make sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, we had taken a straw poll before, Councillor Khan, about it. And so are you changing your vote from keeping to dissolving that subcommittee?
To me, right now, I mean, after hearing argument from the members, to me, it doesn't make any. To me, it's like you are making a subcommittee within us, and that subcommittee is going to answer to us. So, I mean, doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Khan. Sorry, Councillor Luba, is your hand still up or did you raise it again for a new point of discussion?
Well, for, as a new point of discussion, I mean, I just, you know, I think we're at a conundrum here now then, because my concern is that while we were on recess, if there was any discussions amongst the, amongst people regarding this issue or anything else, since there was a straw poll that was taken, and the straw poll was that we would keep the subcommittee. So I'm going on that assumption that we're keeping the subcommittee at this point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Luba, for that point of correction or point of note. My point at this juncture, it seems like we're at an impasse, but my lean is, and I am in agreement that it should be bipartisan. So in that case, we would then need, I believe, a resolution to allow the chair or vice chair to appoint a designee in their absence to those meetings. Otherwise, the chair and vice chair are the go-to individuals that attend the subcommittee meetings.
I can make that motion, make a motion to amend the current policy from chair and vice chair to chair and vice chair or their designee.
All right, is there a second?
Lulu, I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Councillor Nuccio,
Aye.
Councillor Yudichak,
Aye.
Councillor Khan,
Aye.
Councillor Falusi,
No,
Councillor Regan,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So that is a 6-1, I believe. If I just apologize if I've missed any councillors.
Yes, I'm an aye. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Luba. Thank you.
That's all good.
Thank you. All right. So with that being said, I believe we have everything else squared away. Sorry for that lengthy conversation, but I'm appreciative of everyone's comments and the back and forth that was provided. With that being said, I would entertain a motion to approve the list of liaisons to the boards and commissions as outlined in 8.2.
I will make that motion. John Regan.
Tammy
Thank
Nuccio,
you,
I'll
Councillor Regan.
second.
Motion made by Councillor Regan, seconded by Councillor Nuccio. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Oh, sorry. You
No,
didn't
it's
ask
okay,
me yet.
Councillor Nuccio. I was gonna
You
do you
asked me
first,
first,
so
so.
The Councillor Nuccio is an aye. Councillor Yudichak?
No, I actually had a question. Are we voting on the people though for the ARP committee? Like,
Yeah.
we need somebody? That was just my question.
So I think that was up to the chair and vice chair to assign a designee in the event they cannot attend. I believe that they would still be able to attend in the event the designee cannot make it.
Well, I would like to know who are those appointees going to be if either Mr. Reagan or yourself are not going to be there.
Okay, so that's a point of discussion then. So Councillor Regan, do you have a preferred candidate that you would like to have?
I do. It's Councilor Nuccio.
Thank you. And actually, I would like to nominate, if they are interested, Councillor Yudichak to serve as my designee if I am not available.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Councilor Yudichak. So my apologies. So just to clarify for that motion, that is to approve it. And then for the ARPA subcommittee, it would be the designees of Councilor Regan is Councilor Nuccio, and the designee for Councilor Vice Chair or Chairman Jones is Councilor Yudichak. So going back to that roll call vote, Councilor Nuccio.
I'm still an aye.
All right. Councilor Yudichak.
Aye.
Councilor Falusi.
Aye.
Councilor Regan.
Aye.
Councilor Luba.
Aye.
Councilor Khan.
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that is unanimous. All right, moving on to item 8.3. This is the consideration of approval to allow the town manager to authorize applying for a SAFER grant, staffing for adequate fire and emergency response through FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grants Program. I will defer to interim town manager Lisa Hancock to provide the summary, as well as recognizing Chief Lytell and a number of Tallinn Fire Department and Public Safety staff are on the meeting to provide additional background and context. So with that being said, interim town manager Hancock, please take it away.
Okay, thank you. About a month or so ago, we had met and discussed this idea of a grant that we could apply for that would pay for up to, we were hoping to apply for 5 positions for the fire department for public safety officers. John went through a presentation regarding the need for this. He's trying to develop some new shifts. He's had some issues with volunteers and insufficient staffing and volunteers during emergencies. I do have John Lytell here and Carl Dozian this evening, and I know there are some other representatives online from the fire department as well. What we were asking, he did, in your packet tonight, you will see that there's statistics on information on increase in calls for services, and how the John Lytell would like to try to add like another shift to cover some of these areas, because he is just not getting enough volunteer response in some instances where they're being torn several different ways, where he's actually out on the road responding, the fire marshal is out responding, and a particular situation not too long ago, everybody was out, there were 3 calls, and there weren't sufficient people to respond to all of those calls. When that happens, we have to reach out for multiple agencies to try to get support, whether it's another ambulance from our on-call ambulance service. If they're not in the immediate area, it takes longer for them to respond. That is a public safety issue that we're concerned about. I certainly, if you'd like, I can have John speak to this a little bit, but that's totally up to you. If you'd like me to have him discuss more, just let me know. So what we were talking about back then after the presentation was to try to take a look at, how we can go forward with trying to apply for this. We'd like to apply for the grant. There's no guarantee that we would get it. But what I was asked to do was to try to take a look at what the costs would be. My idea was to try to phase it in to the budget over the next 3 years, whereas because we would not be paying the salary for 3 years, it's a substantial hit. If you had 5 public safety officers, it would be close to $500,000 or so to incorporate them into the budget. If it all hit at once, after year 3, we would become responsible for hiring those officers full time. So what I did was I gave you various scenarios here, and I'd like to just quickly go through them. In a situation where if we were to have 5 public safety officers, my thoughts were to try to increase the budget. I gave a couple scenarios here. The first piece here is to maybe just put one position into the budget. Now, this 85,000 that you see here is a fully loaded salary. That includes benefits, pension, health benefits, as well as the salary. The salary itself, if you look here in year one, is around 55,000. But then you have all the fringe benefit costs that you must pay for, plus the health insurance and life insurance that's part of the union contract. This first scenario shows budgeting for one officer in year one, and it's for 5 officers in total. So at the end of year 3, starting year 4, we would have to actually pay in full ourselves for the 5 officers if that's what you approve. What I did here was I showed in year 2 where we'd have the officer is to add in one more officer. So the increase, so each year the increase to the budget would be close to $100,000. What I'm proposing to do is move those funds into a stabilization fund for the years that we're not spending that money. The money would be transferred into the municipal tax stabilization fund and build up a reserve. At which point in year 4, where we would have to have the full 5 officers in the budget, there's a major hit for 191,000 at that point to bring in the additional 2 officers here. And what I started doing, and these could be changed in any which way, but I tried to see, you know, where we could try to limit some of the impact going forward by using what was in the reserve. So as of the end of year 3, we'd have about 528,000 in the reserve. The full budget will be on the books at about 460,000. Then what I had recommended was to take about 150,000 off of the budget to help support the impact on the mill rate and try to phase it in at that point. And then at some point, it's definitely going to have an impact, but to try to phase it in over a period of time so that the impact doesn't hit as quickly. I'll stop for a minute because I noticed that Tammy has her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Steve?
Councilor Nuccio, do you have a question?
Stupid mute. Yeah, I do. So Lisa, if we're looking at this, the 85 is the fully loaded, correct, for one?
Say that again?
The 85,000 is the fully loaded amount for
one officer, yes.
Right, and then that's why it's going up. Are you figuring in contractual? It looks like you're figuring in contractual increases, so that's good.
Yeah, that's here. So each year, that's why it didn't just go up 85,000 in year
Right.
2 when you added another person, because now you have the impact of the union wage increases or estimated wage increases, as well as potential costs with health insurance.
Okay, so do you have what this would equate to in a mill increase every year?
I don't, because, and I really toyed hard with trying to figure that out. The problem is never knowing what revenues we will have and won't have on the overall impact. That's, you know, there could be other revenues in another year that we may have that will also help offset this. So it's really difficult to try to say it'll be a mill or a half a mill. I was having trouble just trying to come forward with that in an analysis. What I can say is that it certainly will be, by the time year 4 comes around, almost a $500,000 impact on the budget. But again, it won't all hit at one time. It would be phased in.
But the
So,
first
I
3
mean,
years would
if-
be, the first 3 years would be direct hits.
Right, 85,000, 89,000, 94,000, about 100,000 each year, yes, would definitely impact it. Again, in 22, 23, I do know unless things change at the legislature, that we will be having some revenues coming in, so it may be an opportune time to help offset some of the impact.
I'm hoping that we might see something different from an ECS perspective if I can get transportation factored in. And then from year 3 and out, there's the possibility of it maybe freezing, but we don't have commitment on that yet. But I think for the next 2
And
years.
those are the things that made it so difficult for me to say, this is going to be a $500,000, or this is going to be $1 million or $2 million. Well, it wouldn't be 2 mils, but do you know what I'm saying? It just,
Can we get an idea of the estimate, just like a high level estimate for at least year 1 of the 22, 23? I know we don't have budget on that, but if we looked at it right now to say how much of a mill increase that would be, just to get an idea. I know it's not going to be an exact science, but I think it would be beneficial to understand what the impact would be. That's all that I have for now.
All right.
well, if we used the same mill rate, say 30, oh boy, I don't have the number.
We're 37.11 right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's
I didn't have the exact number.
Numbers are kind of tricky.
If you were to divide that into by 85 times 37, no. I don't want to do this on the fly.
Lisa, I don't think you have to, unless we're making an
No.
absolute decision on this tonight, you can get us that information.
Yeah, I do need to have a decision fairly soon, and I can certainly put something together, but I just don't want to make a mistake trying to figure out something on the fly. I mean, if you look at 85,000 times the 37 mill rate, it's a little over $3,000 in taxes overall, but that I just need to check that. So we can certainly put it on the December 14th once I get that number, but I still like to go through the scenarios with you to get some sort of idea, to give you some sort of idea of what the impact is. Again, here, if you look at the next one down for 5 officers, this one put 2 in the first year. Major hit to the budget, almost $171,000. So I looked at phasing it in a couple different ways and provided those numbers. And again, now you'll have a little more of a money set aside to help phase it in over future years. The next, I don't know why that printed like that. The next scenario shows with, instead of 5 officers, maybe 3 officers. I didn't do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but just to show you, if you were to use 3 officers, what that would be, and how we would have to phase it in over 3 years, and showing you how we would offset the budget for that. The same thing if I put 2 in the first year, moving forward to the third. Chairman Jones, you have a hand raised. Oh, you're muted.
I was waiting for you to conclude before I recognized
Okay.
Councilor Nuccio because I saw that their hand was being raised.
So am I good? That's me. Go.
Yep, you're good.
Okay. So Lisa, now I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So year 1, say we're looking at the scenario that's up there now. Year 1, we would look at an increase to the budget of 171,000-ish. Year 2, we'd be looking at an additional increase of about 92,000.
Mhm.
Year 3, okay, so we would be at capacity in 2 years for the for the 3 people in this case. I guess my
2
question,
to 3 years, depending on which scenario you went with. This is for three officers.
right, so in
Okay.
year 3, we have to start paying for it 100% out of our budget, right?
In
So at
either
that,
scenario.
right, in either scenario. So at that point, we would be up to about the 276,000. And we would have, what are we saying here? We would have 701,000 in our reserve at that point.
Right.
So that would already be included in our budget though. So I guess I'm wondering why we would, after we build in the 200, the 200, in this case, it would be what, 276,000 is what would hit that year. That's already in our budget. The 269,060 is already built into our mill rate in our budget. So if we start applying this offset,
Then you're gonna
We're gonna be
eventually get hit again
reducing
in the future.
right,
You're
we're gonna
right.
be reducing it in the future, though it's already there. So I guess that doesn't really make a lot of
Yeah,
sense to me.
no, I agree with that. And I was just trying to show a way of, if we started building it in, the only other thing we could do is you can have these funds set aside for other needs. If you
Well,
wanted to
that's
do
what I
that.
was thinking, like, if
know-
you start backing it back out, then what's
Yeah.
gonna happen is at the year, once those reserve funds are gone away, our budget's gonna hit right back up to the
Exactly.
500,000 amount again.
And I was getting there.
Yeah. You and me were brain melded like that. I get
Yeah,
it.
but,
So- That's my concern, is that we would then get hit with, it's gonna be back in there at year, in this case, it would be year 7, we'd be back up to that full amount. So if we were gonna use it to offset anything,
I would, if it were to be used to offset anything, my recommendation would be for one-time type expenses.
absolutely.
So if it were like, when you see the capital plan, and I believe me, I've been diligently working on it. We have some major hits coming in the future because things have been pushed off so very long. And there's a lot of equipment, vehicles, things like that, that need to be addressed in order to provide the services for the town. Some of this could help offset those one-time type expenses in the future. We have several different fire apparatus that it'll all be discussed during when we do the presentation, but it could be set aside for some of those items so that we are not issuing debt if that were the case.
I think that would probably make more sense, because if you're gonna be just building this into the budget, so when year 5 hits, it's already built in, then I would think that the money that we're putting into the budget, we could designate to, something at that point that would be off the capital budget, one-time expense, because it's just gonna be excess. That's gonna already be in our budget, and it's just gonna be money that's either going to the general fund balance or specific for something.
Well, I would certainly recommend it going into the stabilization fund and you use it to offset future needs of the town. Again, you've raised a very good point. I was trying to get there, but I was still trying to give you the scenario that I was asked for to do, unless I misunderstood it. However, in either way, any way that you look at it, it's still going to be an impact to the taxes and
Yep.
of the community to provide the level of public safety that the chief feels is needed.
I'm good for now with questions.
Thank you, Councilor Nuccio. Councilor Falusi?
Before I ask my questions, was there more of a presentation you wanted to do on these documents? Because I can hold off.
Well, certainly I have the chief here and the assistant chief or deputy chief. I'm sorry, Carl, if I got it wrong. And certainly if you would like any input from them, or if you just have questions for them, I'd entertain those now if you'd like.
my questions were actually for you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So I have a couple questions. First, thank you for so much for putting this together for us. It's really helps in understanding what's going on. Now that we've had the opportunity to see where the fire department is short-staffed, I'd like to be able to also capture where else we are short-staffed. Like in the past year or 2 years, what other departments have come to the town manager and said, listen, we really need some more staff in this location, and this is why we need it. Because I would hate to say yes to one department and find out there was an equal need somewhere else.
Oh, did you want me to respond to that, or is that just?
If you want to, I mean, I know that I figure this is
Certainly.
probably something you don't have at the tip of your fingers, but.
No, but I do have information because we are discussing the budget for next year, and I've given direction to department heads to start working on their budgets. I am aware of various areas, just from working with the town so long, as well as speaking with department heads, that yes, there are other areas of town that do need additional staff. I have to balance that with everything that has to come in. Certainly have suggested to those who have expressed that to include it as a request and to be able to substantiate it and be able to prove the need for it, which is not that hard. So we will be presenting that in the overall budget request for the areas that we all work together on to determine what will move forward.
Okay, thank you. For me, because this one is time sensitive, it would be easier for me to be able to make a decision if I knew what needs were in the town instead of just for this one department and then having to wait 6 months or, however long it is in the process before we found out the rest. The other two were about the grant. I wanted to know how competitive this grant was. Like, is it extremely competitive? Is it you apply and you usually get it sort of thing? And also, if we do apply and if we are awarded the grant, can we decide not to accept the money? The reason why I'm asking that is if this is time sensitive and we want to, and we're unsure if we want to staff these needs, if applying for the grants and then making the decision once we find out if we get the grant or not would give us more of an opportunity to find out where, if this is the path we want to go, if these are the roles we want to fill, or if there's other roles that are more important within the town. So those were my questions.
Chairman Jones, do you want me to
Yes.
respond?
Yeah, if you're able to respond.
Okay. I am not deeply familiar with all the intricacies involved with this particular grant. I know the chief may be able to add something to it if I call on him in a minute. However, most grants, when they are awarded to the town usually has to sign some sort of an agreement and acceptance letter. And in that respect, we could discuss it if that were the case, to determine if you did want to move forward for it. But however, if you're awarded, say 5 PSOs, public safety officers, I'm not sure if you can actually, I'm not sure you can actually say we only want 3 unless you can go through an entire amendment process with the granting agency. A lot of times they, sometimes they will work with you and sometimes they won't. Other situations, like I said, you can usually not accept the grant. Again, that would, if that were decided after the work that goes into preparing this particular grant is tremendous. There's a lot involved to try to sell your point. It is a competitive grant. There have been several other communities who have received the grant. It's a very similar grant to what we applied for in the past for the scuba SCBA breathing apparatus. And that particular grant, we tried 2 or 3 times and did not get it. I'm hoping because of the situations out there, there's so many different volunteer fire departments that are losing volunteers. It's not just unique to Tolland, but it's throughout the state. They're all facing the same issue with less volunteers. That, you know, that may give us an advantage there. Now, if you'd like me to have John Lytell comment a little bit in brief, I can ask him, Councillor Jones, Chairman Jones.
Yes, that is quite fine. Chief Lytell, if you'd like to add any additional commentary, that would be appreciated.
I'm gonna see if he's still.
Thank you, Chairman. Permission to speak about the SAFER grant.
Yep.
So the SAFER grant is a very competitive grant. By being proactive and coming to the council and looking to get approval to apply for it would be a huge check mark saying that they know that we've already gone through the process, that the town would end up backing the grant up. As far as the numbers of the percentages, obviously that would get into discussions. There have been other communities that have gotten the grant and have denied it because of either one, they didn't get their town's approval, or two, they weren't an established fire department. Being a combination department has its privileges because we're already established. So it's adding to the staffing. And if we go to approve it, we want to make sure, I've sent some new people to some seminars. We want to make sure that we end up that we're asking for, I know we classified them as public safety. We want to make sure that we're asking for firefighters, firefighter staffing wise. If you end up mentioning anything else because of COVID or anything else in the past years, it will be a big red check mark across it that they'll just say that you're rebounding. Myself and the assistant chief are going to Niantic at the end of the month and a few more times in December because there's that 2025 summit I brought to the council's attention a few years ago. So Pennsylvania, you can research it, is a model that they've already gone through this with a huge influx of losing departments, closing departments, merging departments together. So Connecticut's looking at that model right now to do a merger or look at consolidation wise. So we're pretty stagnant here wise that we're kind of ahead of the curve. So that's why we're coming for to brief you, because this is something that we've never applied for before. And we're trying to catch up and we're trying to be proactive, similar to as you read planning and zoning minutes and adding apartments and adding other things and businesses and other things. Those are drivers. So I would hate to see us, 3 to 4 years down the road, having no staffing and having something and losing one of the entities of public safety, whether it be the fire side, the ambulance side, or something else. But like our intern town manager that's doing a great job has said, she knows it. I've had a couple of meetings with a couple of towns close to us. Everyone's facing this across the, especially Connecticut. So we're doing what we can. That on-call ambulance and mutual aid agreements, those are becoming very heavy for all the surrounding towns. So it's driving the call ratios up for all the towns around us, which means that we're running back-to-back calls, meaning that there's many times during the daytime that there's no staffing in-house or here at different hours of the day or even nighttime. So you see that Rockville Hospital's closing and, closing out their emergency room. You see what's happening at Wyndham. Well, those make the trips longer to Manchester, St. Francis, and Hartford. So those are longer turnaround times with staff that's coming back. So we're just trying to be proactive, and we want to make you aware of this grant because we never applied for this one. But like Lisa said, we applied for the capital for the SCBA's. We did that 4 years in a row and we didn't have any success. So just trying to be proactive and be ahead of the curve, if you know what I mean.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Just before I go to Councilor Nucci, I had a couple questions, but I also want to make sure if there were any other counselors that had questions, if they wanted to raise their hands, just to go around the room one time before we hit that. So I'll let Councilor Udacek if you want to go first, and then unless you ask the same questions I do, then we'll go to Councilor Nucci.
Okay, thank you. This is more of a question for the fire department. First, thank you for all you do for our community. And I guess my big question is the hopes that we become a 24/7 fire department, like having firefighters or EMTs staying overnight at the new fire stations. I just find that we're most vulnerable during the times that we don't have somebody at the station.
Permission to speak on that, Chairman Jones?
Of course, Chief Lightow.
So basically right now we have the full-time staffing covering from 6 to 2 o'clock or 6 to 6. That was always the goal for the past years. We did get one extra member a year ago. So right now we're just short at that 6 a.m. time frame, meaning that first call comes in. We don't have anybody till 8 o'clock. So our goal right now is that if we end up getting the 5, my goal would be to, and first and foremost, to go on record, I am not trying to create a paid department 24/7. We're very fortunate with the volunteers that we have. That takes a lot of influx off of having a 24/7. But the initial approach over this, and the officers and the rest of the members are on board with it, is to take that first call right off the get-go, because that 5, 6, 7 o'clock time frame is a tough time frame, whether it be the morning or nighttime. So right now we're running so many back-to-back calls. We would, if we were fortunate enough to get the full staffing, we would probably end up looking at, and it would be a team effort among the staff and the officers and the volunteers to look to say, do we put on a 3 to 11 or do we put a 12 to 11 and then have that still duty crew volunteer cover that 12 to 6 when some of the calls aren't so much, we're not running so many back-to-backs, but then again, sometimes that's when the big call is, but there's a lot of staffing that is around at 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, but the problem is they have to go to work. So at least with the staffing levels, I can do a call back for career staff to come back in or to come in early, or even the storm duties that we have. So trying to look to take off the burden of those other calls, because right now we're running that duty crew right after 6 p.m., 7, and there's not a lot of volunteers sometimes for that second or third call, or if they take that second or third call, well, then there's a fire call. And like the town manager said, either myself or Assistant Chief Dojan or the Deputy Chief are the only 3 that's out there at 9 o'clock at night. And like we said, we're trying to take off that first burden and still have some extra staffing, if that makes sense.
It does. I think I'm just saying everything out loud that you're there during the day, which is great, but at night, just I could be wrong. Like, how long? I guess my question is, you guys are there during the day. How long does that call take for you to go to where you need to be? Versus if you don't have somebody overnight, staying overnight at the station, does it take from a person, a volunteer, to get to the fire department, to get to the person that needs the help, if that makes sense?
So I'm going to try to answer that the best I can, Chairman Jones. Your audio came in and out, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to try to answer the best I can. I think you're asking what the time frame is for that second crew to come in to cover that call. Basically right now they do a retone. So if the first duty officer to duty crew's out, they'll tone it, and then 3 to 4 minutes later they'll do a retone. After the second retone, the career staff is added automatically to that second tone. So if they're around or close by, they can come right back and jump in and go. But if it doesn't, it's all dependent. So for instance, your neighborhood would end up getting a mutual aid, most likely probably from Vernon. But if Vernon's running those back-to-back calls, you might get Coventry. Coventry using a commercial service right now that's having a problem. You might not get Coventry, which means you might get Yukon. So you could be looking at 40 minutes.
I guess my follow-up, can I ask another question? I don't know when I can, I guess my follow-up question, I guess is, my point is, I would think that if we had somebody at the fire station overnight, then that would cut down a lot of that time and make being able to get help quicker to somebody if we had a own staff overnight.
It definitely would. So but the problem is we run so many back-to-back calls in this town that your first duty crew, if you only had 2 or 3 people on, that would be the first crew out the door. So depending on which volunteers end up responding to the station, and just keep in mind, we only have 2 ambulances, center of town, Chris Lake Road. If the duty crew is at station 140, because that's kind of where the sleeping, because the other stations don't have any of this, that means that ambulance is already gone at 10 o'clock at night. So if the duty crew had to come back down to station 240, that would take, depending on jumping in their car at 10 o'clock at night, coming down to the firehouse. Perfect example is from the center of town to Deer or Plains Road. That's 14 minutes, 15 minutes driving from my office to there. Add 15 minutes on that in the middle of the night. Carl, correct? Deputy Chief, I think you guys agree with the timeframes.
Yes, if I can just add a little bit,
Sure.
if that's okay. It's the first crew gets out pretty quick because we usually have the people at the stations. It's the second crew that is a little bit longer because they're coming from home. It's a second call. They're not technically assigned to duty. And that was the intent with the ambulance being staffed up to midnight or 11 o'clock, that we would get that first crew out. We'd have a second crew assigned, so it would lessen the time we would have for response. A lot of time we ran 5 calls at once Saturday, and we responded from St. Francis Hospital to go to Wood Lake. So, if you've done the drive before, it's a good long response time. The same with we responded from Manchester Hospital, excuse me, to go to Wood Lake, a second call for an unresponsive person. So we had an ambulance on the air, but it's a long trip to go. So we're trying to cut that time down. When people are responding from home, it always adds time on 9 to 10 minutes by the time they get up and get to the station where the apparatus is.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Doge. And I believe Councilor Udacek lowered their hand, and they answered a majority of my questions. The only one I would add on to that, just at the high level for Chief Lightel, what would be the major difference between if it was either 5 or 3, or I believe the third scenario that the interim town manager provided was, I believe it was 2. Is that correct, Lisa? It was 5, 3, or 2 on those scenarios?
No, what I gave you 2 different scenarios. One was for 5 officers, the other was for 3 officers, but I phased them in differently into the budget.
Okay.
So for example, this is 3, but I had 1 off the first year. The second year I put 2 in right away. So I was just showing you the difference.
Okay.
Doing that.
So yeah, then just getting back to that question for Chief Lightel, what would be the impact difference between if you were to apply it for up to 5 versus up to 3?
So depending on the call nature, it's all variant. So like the assistant chief just said, we ran 5 calls. We run a lot of those calls first thing in the morning. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'm calling DPW to get the apparatus off the highway because I have no drivers and no staffing. Take a normal accident. A normal accident is 2 people on an ambulance, 2 people at least on a rescue truck, and it would be nice to have a fire truck come along with it. But we don't have that a lot of times during the daytime. I have 2 guys driving the ambulance and maybe 1 guy driving the rescue. So having the 5 staffing, it's depending on the call. Now you take a house fire, well, then you're looking at least it'd be nice to have 15 guys because of the different hoses and cycling people out, and then rehab wise, because we have to meet certain requirements as far as 2 in, 2 out and that type of nature. But you know, when we have those large fire calls, we end up calling a mutual aid. We try to get a mutual aid ambulance in to cover us as a backup, but it's all call dependent. You know, you get a serious accident or you get something, and I know a lot of people think that I-84 is the big drivers and the I-84 is the big crashes. And when you end up getting them, it's nice to have that 9-10 people, because you have 2 to 3 victims, or you have 3 or 4 cars, or you have a time constraint of trying to cut somebody out of a vehicle. So does that kind of make sense or answer?
Yeah, it does. And I guess then it would also impact when we are contacted for mutual aid, correct? That if we had 3 additional versus 5, it might impact positively or negatively the staff that cover the town in the event we're called in for mutual aid, say like in Ashford or another town. When they're
Yeah.
dealing with a substantial incident.
I mean, we've had a death for the last 6 weeks in a row. A CPR call requires at least 4 people. And then if you end up transporting, you're losing 3 people. So there's many times that during the morning or even in the evening, there's nobody here. There's, you know, we'll hit the tones and hopefully maybe somebody's on a vacation day, somebody's off, but those calls are just scenarially increasing. The numbers that, you know, Lisa provided you, that 1861, those are the numbers that we're giving that last packet. We're at 2160 right now from that last time that you just got this information. So if that just gives you a little clue that we're at that 21 number already, you know, so if that kind of answers it.
No, thank you, Chief Littell, and thank you, Councilor Nuccio, for your patience. If you would like to go next, and then Councilor Luba, if that's okay, or Councilor Luba followed by Councilor Nuccio.
Let Lou go if he wants.
Okay.
I'm good. Actually, I was debating, but all my questions have been answered at this point. So I might have some follow-up regarding the Manning issues, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. So Councilor Nuccio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Lisa, I pulled out the budget book to start looking at some of the numbers that you have there. And I'm thinking from the scenario that you had, the first one for the 5.
Yep, let me get back to it. Here we go.
Okay, if we're looking at that one and we're looking at the slow build, in year 4 up to 5, if the additional 2 would be added for 5. I think that year alone, that 150,000 there, I think it would, if we can get a scenario, I think it would make sense to just take out of the stabilization fund the salary for 1 increase. So that way, every year, if we did the 5, it would be a budgetary impact of 1 person all the way through year 5. And if we did that, then it would look like the balance would pretty much be about $432,000 that we could use for some sort of other expense, probably like a one-time thing. And then in the one below it, down there, same
I'm
sort of,
not following you. I'm sorry.
I'll send it to you. I'm just
All right.
playing with the numbers and looking at it.
I could send you the spreadsheet if you'd like, if it's okay with, I can send it to everybody. I don't care.
Yeah, that's fine, because
It's
I'm
up
just looking
to
at,
the chair if he's okay with that.
Yeah, that would be fine with me.
All right.
rather
I'm just
than looking
at-
at doing the offset for the every year, because the budget going up and then down and then up again.
Yeah,
If we're just looking to smooth in the
Yeah.
5, then just using enough to buffer the year that we would have to add 2, just putting the buffer in for 1. So then the next year you'd have the full impact of all 5. But I'll send it to you in an email. And then I looked at the same sort of things with the 3. And my only concern with the 3 is if the first scenario on the 3 that you had there, if we did the 1, 2, 3, we would end up having about that $529,000 that would be in a stabilization fund, which I would say at that point, that would be the number that we would be looking at for using for a capital or one-time expense thing.
right.
My bigger concern is the last scenario you have. I just think from a budgetary perspective, that's going to be a big hit because we're doing 2 and then right to 3. Granted, you'll have $700,000 off in a fund that we can use for a one-time, something one time. But that $170,000, just the one person at 92,000,
Mm-hmm.
it's about a 0.15% increase in expenses. So the 70%, you know, it's going to be, I mean, the two at the 170 is going to be a bigger hit.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking of the mill rate perspective here.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly give a big boost to the mill rate. Again, I just didn't want to try to calculate that on the fly tonight because I don't like to make mistakes. And
I got the book out, don't worry.
Yeah.
I got the book.
That's good. Thank you.
So I'll send you my my notes on it and that.
I mean, it's up to you. If you feel comfortable with the numbers tonight, I'm not sure where the council wants to head with this. If they want to have more information or just allow us to move forward and then have the opportunity to see where it goes.
I can say I don't think I'm comfortable tonight without seeing all the numbers kind of played out in that and understanding what the mill rate increase was going to be before we say yes, because I don't think I can say yes to 3 or 5 at this point. I think I need to have the information to be able to make that, but that's just me, and that's all I have, Chairman.
Well, here's the thing. Also, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we did apply for it and we determined, oh, no, that's the thing. We couldn't say apply for 5 and say we only want 3, correct, John?
Carl, correct me if I'm wrong or not, but I think you can add 5 and you can accept part of the grant. I know towns that have applied for it and
Yeah.
were not ready or couldn't fund it, so they passed the whole grant up.
Right.
But, you know, it comes out in January, so, you know, like a meeting and having a discussion and looking at the forecast, that's a big part of just being behind it, moving forth. And, you know, like I said, I mean, you don't have to accept it. You know, we've written grants before in town and having accepted it because you can't back it up, you know?
Well, that's what I'm leading towards, is if, you know, even if we were able to move forward with this and then be able to negotiate either not to accept it because the council feels it's too much of an impact on the mill rate, or to maybe negotiate to have less. If that's a possibility, we still might be able to move forward tonight, but still give you information for a final process. But if you'd prefer to wait till the 14th, then I can certainly, you know, there's still enough time.
I think what we're going to see across the nation is that the sooner that departments end up applying or getting on board on this, I think 2 to 3 years, like we've said with the 2025 summit, then it's going to be a bigger avenue of many other towns all going for the same warm, if that makes sense. You know, we apply for the firefighter assistance grants and we only have to cover 25% of it. But this is something that, and we don't know all the positivity because the grant doesn't get released after January. But what we've heard is they do cover up to 3 years. It's just, we don't have all that backup. Same as like your AFP funds and the rest of it. It's something where we're trying to just be proactive because like you said, it's the amount of work that ends up going into this to write and the backup material. It's not going to be a 2-week grant writing, you know?
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Nucci, are you all set? Because I was going to go to Councilor Regan, followed by Councilor Khan, and then Councilor Luba. Looks like Councilor Nucci is all set. So Councilor Regan? You're able to unmute.
There he is.
My apologies. It's only been 2 years since we've been doing this. You'd figure I'd get it right. So you won't get an argument from me on the need. And I think the easy answer here is to say yes. But I'm just looking down the road at future budgeting, and would it make sense to add the public safety officers through the regular budgeting process? Because looking at the information provided in the packet, we've added staff since 1980 gradually over time. And there were years in between where we've added staff. And if you, and looking at this, we're adding 5 people right now. So we need 5 people. That tells me that we're pretty deficient. And I'm not sure if that's the case right now. Maybe somebody can correct me on that, but I would rather see it go through the regular budgeting process, similar to the way we did with the resident troopers. When I was here previously, we added resident troopers through the regular budgeting process. I think we can do the same thing here. I just don't want this to fall into the lap of, believe it or not, it'll be the next council that will have to deal with this when the funds run out. So I just want to know if probably from you, Lisa, if it makes sense to just try to do it through the regular budgeting process on a gradual basis over time.
Chairman Jones, may I respond?
Yes, of course.
Okay. In response to that, my intention this year was to have John put at least 1 position in the budget. I don't know if the process would support more than adding 1 to the budget. And certainly moving forward, the goal would be to add more in the future. But it would take each year to look at it and see how we move forward. Similar to this, although we'd be paying right away. What this would allow us to do is build it into the budget as we originally would have, but also get paid for it in the beginning and be able to set some funds aside at the same time. So you're building it in slowly over time rather than, so in either way, depending what scenario, how you do it, you are building it into the budget. It just depends on the number of positions we move forward with.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Councilor Regan. Councilor Khan?
Hi, John. I'd like to say thank you for serving town of Tallinn, and I know you work very hard. And I can see it from the window, as you know that. My only question is, if you do add up 3 or 5 people, 5 officers, how many shifts would you cover? 1 shift, the morning shift, from 6 to 6, and are they going to be a permanent to town of Tallinn? They can be moved anywhere else where they going for the next 3 years?
Carl, do you want to respond
Oh,
to that?
sorry, you're still muted, Chief Lytle.
Yep.
I can respond or the chief can respond. It's up to him.
Okay, either is fine.
We're not gonna, they wouldn't be moved anywhere. Obviously what we'd like to end up doing is extending the shift, like I said, up to midnight, and that would give us the purpose to run 2 ambulances all the way through the day and night. Similar to what, the budget processing has, this whole career staffing started in 1980, when we had full-time staffing. And then that back then was 4 officers. In 1995 is when we hired the 5th. 2008 is when we hired the 6th. And then obviously 2021 is when we finally added the 7th, which we were supposed to add, 1 more. But we're trying to offset it with the budget process because we try to start it halfway. So if you start positions halfway, it kind of just offsets the budgetary book. But this would cover, from 6 a.m. up into that midnight time category. And by going for the full 5, we would be where we would need to be probably in 3 years because of the influx of the calls and, the additional apartments and stuff that's going to be happening. So if that makes sense, we're very fortunate with the UConn students, like I've always said, that takes a huge burden off of what we have. But in the summer, they go away. So I lose a lot of those kids and I lose a lot of that staffing. I just got a a resignation letter this morning. We got 4 years, 5 years out of a great person who became an officer. So now it's filling her shoes, if you know what I mean. So that's kind of where we are, if that makes sense. Council Kane.
Uh, it does make sense. The only thing is like I'm in a favor of 3 and 5, but as long as I don't know, Tallinn can be secured and service can be provided on timely manner. Because just a small example, like about 2 weeks ago on Saturday afternoon, there was a fire at 7-Eleven. There was a truck was fired. Everybody was there, all the volunteers, everything, everybody was there, but fire truck was not there till minute 13. So it's like, that's not even a quarter miles away from the firehouse. So as long as you can assure that getting the money and then after 3 years, getting more money out of the budget and going the mill rate high to the people, because as of right now, I mean, it's not to me, it's not a good time for the other people to pay more taxes because I think I don't know, I'm in a favor of, as long as business safety is not compromised.
And I appreciate
Ron?
that. You know all too well, because you had a medical incident at your store when a mutual aid ambulance came in when nobody was in town. So that car fire that you're talking about, there was only one driver and myself, the fire chief, with the hose line till some other
Yes,
people.
I do. So that, yep, you were there, but the truck wasn't there till minute 13. So minute 13 means that there was, thanks goodness, there was no propane, there was no nothing else was the car was right in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. So we're
But,
trying to cover the Monday through Friday, and obviously, like you said, we're trying to be proactive coming forth with this number each year. I think we're gonna have to start looking to be more efficient, like most other departments, and having something. It's gonna come down to a 7-day, 24/7 eventually, with a couple bodies or staffing. Those calls are just coming and coming, and like I said, we're fortunate with the UConn students, but it's what ends up happening with the call levels. You know what I'm saying? So if we're not there, mutual aid's coming in for those other calls, whether it be Wellington or Vernon or Coventry.
the last question, John, that's off. Beside that, the volunteer, how does the volunteer work? I mean, they are standing by at their houses or wherever they are, or is there any way we can put them into the fire station for a few hours and to cut down the response time? I do not know how it works, so it's like just put the information.
So yeah,
Thank you.
the volunteers, I can send you that information. You'll see a line item in the budget, but we have, a number of volunteers, and the volunteers right now, we have a duty shift that's on at nighttime. It's usually a duty officer and a duty tech to cover the ambulance calls. And then we obviously try to encourage most of the volunteers to come out. But like this time of year, it's, you have holiday seals or family events. We do have a duty officer on the holiday for Thanksgiving. And hopefully other volunteers come out when there's a major call or something else, because hopefully we don't have any turkey fires. But, in essence, it's all dependent. So those major holidays aren't covered either. So the volunteers are standing by, or you have a duty crew that, does stay in the evening hours at the station, and the duty officer responds to either be the driver for the ambulance or pick up the tech. But that's 2 or 3 people sometimes. But once that first crew goes out, that's that duty crew. The other ones don't get paid to be on call. It's if they're home, if they're around. But if they're parents or they got kids, they're at school events or other community events or shopping, grocery shopping, or doing their normal chores. that's how the volunteer system works. It's, you know, we try to get, we do have one of the best volunteer service around. I can tell you that. We got some great staffing.
All right, thanks very much, John and Paul. And thank you, whatever you guys do for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Luba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Chief and Assistant Chief. I appreciate you guys being here tonight to answer these questions. You know, I think that some of the issues that Councillor Khan and also Councillor Yurchek touched on earlier are just some of the issues regarding running a volunteer fire department where you're going to have some increased without having a full-time staff that can respond like fully on the first call, that you can be running into some of these issues. I mean, having been on, you know, a volunteer fireman before for a number of years, that that the response that you get is as you said, are always around the holidays, are always a little difficult, and whenever there's other obligations. But you guys have an outstanding team, and you have an outstanding department. So I think that that's something that really says a lot to the dedication of the firemen, of the fire servicemen that you're that you're dealing with. I think that we're all in favor of well, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but I believe that all of us here are in favor of increasing the numbers. It's just a matter of how much and how quickly. And I think that for me, my main question would be is, how comfortable are you, or how certain are any of you regarding where if we say go ahead and apply for the 5, that we can say, okay, well, after taking a look at it, we may not be able to afford the full 5 at this point, so we're going to have to cut it down to 3, if that's a possibility. Because if it's something that you could say we could put in for 5, but then adjust accordingly, I think I would almost definitely be in favor of going forward with it at this point. So while Ms. Hancock's taking a look at the numbers and being able to get the numbers to us, but without knowing the numbers, without knowing the mill rate increase, without knowing everything, and then just sort of saying right now, ominous dominus, go forth and do justice, or do safety. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about it. So I think it's something that that if we have the assurances, or at least as much as you can provide us, saying that we could, tell you today, put in for the 5, because I know that it's time, as you said, the time's coming short where you need to act quickly on this, and the quicker that you get your packet together, the better or the more you start working on it, the longer you have to work on your packet, the better packet it's going to be, rather than trying to rush it in at the last minute and submit it and not being able to get everything that you may need to get the final approval on it. So I'm just looking for a little bit of assurance, if you guys can provide it, as far as whether or not you feel that it's something that you could say, yes, we can go for 5, but then adjust accordingly, or no, we need a solid number right off the bat. Because I'm for increasing it. I think that, that you've identified a need, and that looking ahead, that with the apartment complexes, with the other, hopefully more business development and other things that are coming up, that we're going to need it, but it's just a matter of, of how much and how quickly.
We could look into, if I may speak, to answer some of your questions. We based the number that we came up with on the end of that 3-year time frame, where we needed to be. Unfortunately, I heard Councilman Reagan say that you don't want to saddle another council with more than they were expecting, and unfortunately, you guys are the ones that are saddled with more than you were expecting, because this has been it's been too long in coming to get to this point. We can look into talking with we've got some contacts through the grant process that we can see if we can, what we've got for wiggle room in there, if we go for 5 and see if it's negotiable, if the town can only do 3 at the time. Obviously the town and you as our town leaders are going to determine the level of service that the town can afford to give. We can look into that and see how much room is left there to to talk. Obviously, if we're looking for 5 people, we're going to have a better chance of getting the grant than if we go for 2 people. If we went for one or 2 people, they're not even going to consider us, because that's going to be, as you're saying, let's do it in the regular budget process and add the people. So they're looking for what is your need, and the extensive paperwork that we have to fill out for this grant sort of narrows down all of that, all of the things that they're looking for. But that's one thing we can do, is look and make some inquiries as to a scenario of, we're going to apply for 5 if that at the time we're chosen and the council deems it's financially not feasible for them to afford 5, but we can afford 3. Can we downgrade and still get the grant? That's a reasonable thing to ask. Whether or not they're going to allow that, I don't know, but that's something we'd have to look into.
Okay.
But we're more than willing to do that.
And I appreciate that. It's just examining the full range of options so that we know what it is. As I said, I'm fully on board for looking at providing you the most that we can, because I know the difficulties of responding to the calls and other things like that. And it's getting people out there, and the more staff that you have to at least initially respond is important. But it's something that I think that we also need to be cognizant of, as far as, we don't know what's down the road for us as far as other issues that the town may have to deal with. And I just at least know the full range of possibilities before making a final commitment on that. So I appreciate any information you could provide, and then have Ms. Hancock also work up the mill rate so we can sort of get that and make a fully informed decision to make sure that we set you all up for success without drowning the town in debt that we can't afford, or unduly burdening the reserves to the point where it starts affecting the bonding and other issues. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Luba. So while I would be in favor of moving forward with a motion potentially for up to 5, but no fewer than 3, I feel like I'm getting some, this from the discussion, that we would like to table this topic to the next meeting to make a final decision based on some of the inquiries that councilors made. Lisa?
It's up to, if you decide that you want to table, postpone. I was thinking it's the next meeting, so just, it would, yeah, you could table, and then it definitely has to be on the next meeting.
Okay, yeah.
Postponing it would be a later meeting.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so in that case, I would just like to get kind of a sense from the rest of the counselors if they would be comfortable having this tabled to get some of the information various counselors requested and make a final decision on the 14th. I'll just go down the list and see who is in favor of that before having that motion officially made. Councilor Nuccio?
I'm good with that. Thank you.
Councilor Regan?
Table it. Thank you.
Councilor Udacek?
I'm good for tabling it.
Councilor Luba?
Yes, please postpone.
Councilor Khan?
Yes, please.
Councilor Falusi?
Yes.
All right, and I am also in favor of that. So then I would then entertain a motion to table 8.3. I have that correct. Sorry, just bouncing around here for a moment. Yeah, item 8.3 to the December 14th meeting.
This is Lulu. I'll motion to postpone it until that meeting, because tabling would mean we just push it off to the end of the meeting today. So
Oh, yeah, correct. Yes.
postponing it till December, till the first December meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there a second?
I'll second. Calling you to check.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor, going back to the top, Councilor Nuccio? Oh, you're muted. I assume you said aye. Okay, yes. Councilor Regan?
Aye.
Councilor Luba?
Aye.
Councilor Falusi?
Aye.
Councilor Khan?
Aye.
Councilor Udacek?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so we will address this once we get additional information on December 14th. Thank you, everyone, and to appreciate all your patience to the Tolland Public Safety team for being on tonight. Looking forward to getting some of those answers clarified and having you back in December. That being said, we will move on to agenda item 8.4, discussion of dates for council meeting goals. Lisa, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. I know we were going back and forth at the last meeting as to trying to determine when you would like to have your meeting set to talk about your goals. Originally, the proposed schedule was for December 7th at, it could either be 6:30 or 7. I think we originally were saying 7 because there was a Birch Grove possible meeting, but I think that they're going to be canceled on that date. And then December 15th at 6:30 for the second part of it. Certainly, it's all up to you how you'd like to proceed. It was my recommendation to do it in 2 parts to try to at least first identify what you as a council want to address, to first of all go through our current mission and vision, discuss what the goals should be from there, and then moving forward where I can either meet with department staff, get their input, or if there's specific people that you'd like to speak with and we work it out through me, we could do that. It's totally how you as a group would prefer to move forward with this, but I think it's very important to include the people that sometimes deal with some of the goals that you may be recommending, to provide input on those as well.
Right.
So what I'm looking for tonight is direction as to how you want to move with this process.
Thank you, Lisa. For me at this point, I find the dates to be amenable and we can be flexible about the time if meetings do get canceled or not canceled. So I would open the floor to discussion if the 2 proposed dates work for everyone, as well as the outline for part 1 being identifying objectives and activities as a part of our goal sessions, and then part 2 receiving input from staff either electronically or if they're able to attend in person or in a hybrid format virtually. Councilor Nuccio, followed by Councilor Luba.
I'm good as proposed.
Thank you. Councilor Luba?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern is the hybrid. I understand the reasoning behind it, but I think it's something that in the past when we've worked on our goal setting and our discussions, that I think being there in person and having that synergy and having that interaction with one another, as opposed to being, just Brady Bunch boxes on the screen, you miss out some of that exchange and some of that interchange with one another. So while I am willing to go with what the group decides, really I'm but a lowly dirt farmer trying to find my way through life. I would prefer to see you guys every once in a while, and ladies as well, guys and my gosh, I want to see you guys. I want to work together with you guys. I want to be able to work through things and be able to discuss it in person rather than on Zoom. That's just me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Shut up now.
Councilor Luba. I definitely understand your sentiment, and there definitely is a different perspective when you are in person. I think that is the intent of the hybrid. I feel that for the most part, when we switch to that hybrid format, we've in general been able to accommodate the majority of people. Some individuals have had personal conflicts or have been traveling, so this provides some of that flexibility during the holiday season. But I think it is definitely a preference or an ideal to get us all together in person when it's safe to do so.
And I'm sorry, I'm just reading, as you're mentioning it, hybrid. I was reading that Zoom, so.
Oh, okay.
Just disregard all last. I'm sorry, I'll stop now.
That's perfectly fine, Councilor Luba. I appreciate it. Let's see, so Councilor Udacek, followed by Councilor Falusi.
I think I'm good with as it is. I just had a question. Maybe it's supposed to be later on in the meeting I could ask, but I'm still waiting on if we're going to be doing tours. I haven't really had any dates given back to me about.
So I believe there were some communications. I don't know if we had an official schedule set out for some of the tours. I know that there's one being considered for a Saturday in December. Not necessarily town sites. It might be a different site visit. But I believe, Lisa, have you been, I think you've been organizing or touching base with some of the staff members to do site visits of, say, public works garages or the fire stations?
It was on my list of things to talk about under town manager's report tonight, because we've been having some challenges trying to get everyone available at the same time. So I could speak to it now or I could speak later. It's up to you.
Councilor Yudichak, are you okay with it being a part of the town manager's report, or would you rather have some of those answers taken care of now?
No, I can wait. That's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Falusi?
Oh, I was gonna, the comment doesn't really matter now, but for the hybrid for the 15th, I'm relying on that because I have a liaison meeting right after our December 15th meeting that I
Okay.
have to be joining. So, you know, but I realized afterwards, never mind.
No, thank you. So just want to continue around the board. Councilor Khan or Councilor Regan, are you okay with the schedule and outline as proposed?
I'm okay with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe there is no action required. So I think it's just a general discussion. So I believe, Lisa, you should have enough.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure you were all in concurrence with the dates, and as long as you're all in concurrence, and it sounds like you are, then I will move forward to try to get information together to set up these meetings. Would 6:30 on the 7th be okay for everybody, just to give sufficient time, or would that be a challenge? I know Lou had the Birch Grove committee, but it sounds like it's going to be canceled. They're keeping it on the agenda, but more than likely are going to cancel it. It's totally up to you guys. If we could start earlier, it's better, just to, you have, you know, fresher start. I can even, you know, if you wanted me to bring in some pizza or grinders or something for everybody, I could do that if it takes away from your dinner time.
I would be okay with 6:30. Are there any counselors, if they would like to raise their hands, that would prefer it to stay at 7?
You had me a pizza.
Okay,
If I'm not seeing any objection, then let's adjust that to 6:30. So that's
all right,
in alignment with the 15th, that it starts at the same time.
all right, I appreciate that, and we'll just go from there. And
Okay.
yes, I will get pizza. Send me your preferences if you're gonna be in attendance.
Sounds good. Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to item 8.5, appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions. If there is no objection, I would entertain a motion to approve the appointments and reappointments as laid out through 8.5 through 8.5A through 8.5F.
Brenda Falusi, so moved.
Is there a second?
Lulu, about second.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, Councilor Nuccio,
Aye.
Councilor Regan,
I,
Councilor Yudichak,
Aye.
Councilor Khan. Oh, they might be muted. Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilor Falusi,
Aye.
and then just going back to Councilor Khan. Seems like they might be having technical issues, but I am also an aye. So I'm going to say that is a 6-0 unanimous with one absent. All right, moving on to 9, old business. There is none, which then goes to number 10, report of the interim town manager. So Lisa, I know you started a little bit already with some of your comments, but feel free to take it away.
Okay, a few things. We'll get to the tour thing in a minute. Number one, I'm working with our interim finance director to try to develop a new capital budget book. I'm not sure I like the book yet. So what I may do, and we've been working with the software vendor to try to develop, to get it the way we want it. And it may take some programming enhancements. However, what I may do, since December 7th, I think is the date, is coming up, that's when I'll be presenting it. I may give you two different documents, one being the one that you've always received, and two, maybe showing you what we have so far. I think you may like it, but I'll get your input and we'll determine from there if we're going to continue to move forward with that new book or keep our old style. So that was one thing. The other thing is we have advertised for the grant manager, project manager position. We've reached out to several different associations thinking where these type of people may be involved, and hopefully we'll get some good responses. Again, the hiring market right now is awful. It's just awful trying to fill any type of position. We recently tried to fill the assessment technician position, and we are going out on our third try now with that particular position. It's just been a challenge with wage levels, benefit levels, and we're losing out to other communities. So we're looking at alternatives as to how to proceed going forward, possibly bringing in someone who has limited experience, get them trained and up to speed, and go from there. So that's one of the issues we're facing. Our Maureen started in the senior human services department under Beverly. She'll be taking Nancy Dunn's place. Nancy will be retiring next week, and we wish her well, and she's done a great job for us over the years. So we're sorry to see her go, but I think Maureen's gonna bring some good carry forward experience to the operation. Now, talking about the tours, we have some people who are available during the day. We have some people who are available on weekends. A majority were not, from the responses that I have in front of me, were not available on weekends. I did not hear back from John, you, Steve, or Tammy, or if you did respond, it might have gotten missed somewhere. However, my concern on a weekend, you're not going to see the operation in process. So for example, the highway garage, there really won't be any employees there. I could have Scott bringing you through, but the employees won't be there to be able to see a lot of that operation. Fire department, same thing with the at least the crews who may or may not be around. So I'm a little concerned about trying to, to do anything after hours, but maybe possibly, and I know you all work and have busy schedules as well, but if there's a few options that we could look at is, one, if there's a way we can get one day, maybe later in the day, if it works for anybody, or earlier in the day. I don't know, on a weekday, on a Monday through Thursday, to try to bring you all in. Or maybe we could set up, I don't want to burden the staff too much, but maybe try to set up appointments for certain people to come in during the work hours if that's more accommodating. I'm open to whatever you all think could work for the majority to be able to see the operations. But certainly I'd love you to be able to speak to the employees, hear what some of the concerns are, if that's what you're so interested in hearing. Otherwise, certainly you'll hear from me if there's any budget impacts. that will be coming forward in the budget process. I'll certainly be sharing the concerns. But I really can't get a time that's working for everybody at the same time. So if you guys want to hash it out together and let me know, that would be very helpful.
No, thank you, Lisa. And I apologize that I may have forgotten to respond. I actually was inclined, because we did some of the site tours as the last term as an incumbent. I do feel like I have a good grasp of when we did those visits with former town manager Rosen. We did a lot of the highway garages during the cemetery policy discussions, as well as when we were at the time considering the referendum for the firehouse projects. We had done in-person tours of each station to get a look at them. So for
We
me,
kind of figured that's why.
yeah, I don't necessarily, I would like to go see them as a refresher at some point, but it wasn't a high priority for me at this time. So it's probably more for counselors that are new to the council, as well as any that might need that refresher. So I can certainly work with, having myself.
One or all are welcome. Everybody
Okay.
is welcome.
Yeah, so we'll continue to coordinate. But otherwise, I think if there are opportunities for either one-on-ones or meetings that don't necessarily necessitate a quorum where you have to take an agenda or minutes, it can just be an informal 2 to 3 counselors meet up with staff and just kind of walk around and get information and visuals. I think that would be ideal.
Okay, let me know.
Okay.
Or I could just throw some dates out if you'd like and say certain date at a certain time, and you can all say yes or no if you'd like me to try that. I certainly don't mind.
All right, I see Councilor Udacek followed by Councilor Falusi's hands are up.
We throwing dates out tonight? I mean, my only, I think I had already submitted I can do any Tuesday after 1 o'clock, like 1 o'clock and on, I can make it work.
Thank you, Councilor Udacek. And I would say, yeah, I think it sounds like maybe not tonight, but maybe via email, throwing out a couple proposed dates would be ideal. And then if a Tuesday, for example, does work out to be a reasonable date, then throw that out to any available counselor that's able to go on a given Tuesday or Friday, based on the town staff's schedules to do that visit. Councilor Falusi?
My suggestion was just going to be, it's 10 of 10 and we can do this via email.
Okay. No, thank you for that point of note. So we will just move that to an email format, Lisa.
Okay, my only request is when we send out the email, do not reply to all, just reply directly to me or whoever staff person that I have send it out. That would be helpful.
That's why BCC is awesome.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, and that is it for your interim report, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone want to take away anything else from you?
There's probably several other things going on right now, but those were some of the bigger ones.
Okay, no worries. If we have any questions, we can reach out directly as needed. All right, moving on to item number 11, adoption of minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve the adoption of those minutes as laid out in 11.1 and 11.2.
Brenda Falusi, I will make that motion.
I'll second. Tammy Nuccio.
All right. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Councilor Nuccio?
Aye, for my pirate act.
Councilor Egan?
Aye.
Councilor Udacek?
Aye.
Councilor Khan?
Aye.
Yeah. Councilor Luba?
Aye.
Councilor Falusi?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that is unanimous. Moving on to correspondence to council. Before we do, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, I think, Councilor Falusi, did you state at any point that you were possibly looking to have that role moved on to someone else, or are you still comfortable?
I'm comfortable doing it.
Okay.
I am. But I do want to make a note that I did not receive some emails that I know other people in the town council had received. So it's something I'm going to have to follow up with, I guess, Maureen. So I'm going to give you tonight what I have.
Okay.
Okay. So correspondence, besides the usual solicitations that we receive. We received an email from a resident on climate change, another one on solar power, and we've been receiving continuous updates on the correspondence that the town has been receiving about sidewalks. So thank you for keeping us up to date on those correspondence. And again, there were some other emails that I did not receive, but I guess I need to make sure that they went to the entire town council. And if there was an issue with my email, if there was, I will add those to the list next meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Lucy. So moving on to item 13, Chairperson's report. The main item of note is to wish all of you on the council and the town staff a peaceful and pleasant Thanksgiving holiday. Get plenty of rests because we've certainly packed quite a busy December between our two, goal sessions and 2 regular meetings. That's gonna be about 4 meetings throughout the month. In addition, I believe communications have been sent out to the caucuses about a site visit on at the East Lyme Miracle Field at some point on a Saturday in December. So we're hoping to get that finalized. And then obviously we'll be right on the cusp of the start of the budget season. So get plenty of rest, have plenty of food, and enjoy your family, and wishing you all a peaceful holiday. Hope to see you all at the tour on this Saturday, as well as for the tree lighting on the 4th. I believe an invitation was sent out from the Permanent Celebration Commission to the council. So it'd be great to, again, I think as Councilor Luba has iterated, to see all your faces and be together to do some great things as a team. So with that being said, I will move on to item 14, communications and petitions from councilpersons. So if you'd like to raise your hand if you have any communications or petitions that you would like to raise. All right, seeing none. Item 15, public listed participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 3-minute limit. If you're in the public, you can raise your hand with the raise hand icon. Otherwise, if you're on the phone, you can hit *9. Clearly, everyone is already on their way to their families. So moving on to item 16, I would entertain a motion for adjournment at 9:52 p.m.
Brenda Lucy, so moved. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Chief Lytle has his
Oh,
hand up.
sorry, my apologies. It's Chief Lytle.
Nope, that's okay. If it went on and went on, I just wanted to reiterate exactly what you said. So speaking as a resident and also the chief, congratulations to Sammy and Colleen on your appointments to the council, and congratulations to the rest of you for your reappointments, and hope you all have a very nice Thanksgiving, and thanks for all you're doing, and enjoy your holidays.
Thank you, Chief, you too.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. So then I will amend my motion for item number 16 to make a motion. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn at 9:53 p.m.
Brenda Lucy, so moved.
There is
Lou
Thank you, seconded. Lou can have it. Give it to
All right.
Lou.
Or we could
Motion-
drag it on for another 7 minutes, make it even.
Sweet pumpkin pie. I want to go eat dinner.
motion
Aye.
made by Councilor Falusi, seconded by Councilor Luba. If there's no other discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Councilor Nuccio,
Aye.
Councilor Regan,
Aye.
Councilor Khan,
Aye.
Councilor Luba,
Aye.
Councilor Udacek,
Aye.
Councilor Falusi.
Aye.
Did I call Councilor Regan? I apologize if I didn't.
Aye again.
All right, 2 ayes. You can count as my second one. All right.
Aye,
And
aye.
I'm also an aye. So with that being said, thank you all. Have a great night. A fantastic
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy
and
Thanksgiving,
Happy Thanksgiving.
everyone.
Happy
See
Thanksgiving.
you soon. Take care.
Thank you.